For so long, I have struggled looking and seeing the will of God and assuming presumptuously that God's will was always going to be the path of least resistance, that, God was my father and God was always good and he is all these things. But the idea of a good father leading to pains and trials and sufferings was a paradox that I just have recently seemingly come to understand it into a greater and fuller light. And it's really come by God's grace showing me just how good my flesh is not. And he's been so gracious to take me through that, specifically seeing how fragile I am. When I walk into sufferings and I come into trials, I break, I crack. They overwhelm me. My flesh is weak. It is not worthy of my trust. It's not worthy of my faith. And that disappointed me because I felt like I disappointed God for so long. It doesn't surprise him. He's not taken off guard. Rather, that is the expectation. He expects me to fail when I walk according to the flesh, when my good is according to my own definition. When Connor and Connor alone walks through the midst of trial and sufferings and testings, I will fail. And he knows that. And he's not surprised by that. And that is actually why he brought me into it in the first place. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 10, the writer says, "After you have suffered for a little while." And that phrase caught my attention so much. After you have suffered for a little while. And I thought to myself, God, you obviously seem to know that A, there's times where I'm suffering, and B, you are very comfortable with leaving me in that time of suffering. Not that he's left me, but that he has allowed that suffering, that pain, that trial to remain. God, why? Why is that? And it's been through the contrast of understanding, because my flesh is fragile, that's part of it. He wants to show me how good I'm not in my flesh. But then simultaneously, he wants to show me the opposite of that. And that is his, what I call anti-fragility, that he is the opposite of fragile. He is not glass made of china like my flesh is. His spirit in me actually takes resistance. It takes the pressure and it grows my endurance. It grows my faith. It grows my sight of him. And of anything, it grows my confidence in him. And the rest of that verse says, "After you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself perfect, confirm, strengthen, and establish you." When resistance comes upon us, God does not swerve left or right. God does not get around it. God's not looking for an avenue to avoid suffering. What he's asking me rather is, will you be available to me within the suffering so that my inner man, so that my spirit may be displayed in greater strength, greater confidence, greater understanding in you. So who am I to try to pray away my problems when God says, here I am. Here I am with you, and here I am with you so that as the potter and the clay, you may be made more transformed further and further into the image upon which I am creating you. May the nearness of God be more so my definition of good, rather than the absence of pain, the absence of problem, but that my focus is on the nearness of God. Whom have I in heaven but you? And apart from you, I desire nothing else in this world. My heart, my flesh will fail, but God is the strength of my portion forever. And that has become my praise, and that has become my song.